The morning had started like any other, calm, quiet, and perfect. I had just poured my second cup of coffee, the steam curling lazily into the cool mountain air, and settled into my old rocking chair on the porch. From where I sat, I could see the mist rising off the lake, the sunlight dancing across the rippling surface. Birds chirped in the trees, and for a moment, it felt like the world was perfectly still. I'd built this life intentionally. After years of working long hours as a judge, overseeing high-profile cases that often left me exhausted and jaded, this cabin had become my sanctuary. It wasn't just a house, it was a part of me. My father built it with his hands when I was a boy, and when he passed it down to me, I swore to protect it. That peace didn't last long. A white SUV crept up my gravel driveway, its tires crunching against the stones. At first, I thought it was just a delivery, maybe a package I'd forgotten I ordered, but then I saw the emblem on the side of the car. Bold letters screamed HOA enforcement. I sighed and set my coffee down on the railing. I should have known Karen would find some excuse to come snooping around again. The SUV stopped abruptly, and out stepped the infamous Karen, clipboard in hand, oversized sunglasses perched on her face, her hair perfectly coiffed in a way that screamed, "I think I'm in charge." "Good morning, Karen," I said evenly, keeping my tone calm even though I could already feel the headache building. "What brings you up here?" She looked me up and down like I was some sort of pest. "This property," she said sharply, waving her clipboard in my direction, "is not compliant with HOA regulations. You are in violation of multiple community codes. I'm here to inform you that you have 30 minutes to vacate the premises before we escalate this situation." I blinked slowly, processing her audacity. "Karen," I said after a pause, "this land is private. It's been in my family for generations. I don't answer to your HOA." She smirked, clearly thinking she had the upper hand. "Actually, you do. The board voted last month to incorporate this area into the HOA. Your property, your driveway, and even the lake access now fall under our jurisdiction. That means you, sir, are trespassing on HOA land." I couldn't help it, I laughed. Not a polite chuckle, but a deep, incredulous laugh that only seemed to infuriate her more. "You think this is funny?" She snapped. I think," I said, finally managing to stop laughing, "that you have no idea what you're talking about. You can't just vote to take someone's property. That's not how the law works, Karen." But she wasn't listening. She was already dialing her phone. 911. "Yes, this is Karen from the Mountain Pines HOA. I need officers at address. There's a man refusing to leave HOA property. He's hostile and trespassing. Please hurry." I leaned back in my chair, sipping my coffee while she gave the dispatcher her dramatic version of events. Let her dig her own grave, I thought. 15 minutes later, the sound of sirens broke the mountain quiet. 2 patrol cars rolled up my driveway, dust rising behind them. The officers stepped out, hands resting near their belts, scanning the property cautiously. Karen practically sprinted toward them. "Officers, thank goodness you're here. This man is trespassing on HOA property. He's been aggressive and refuses to leave. I demand you remove him immediately." Before the officers could respond, one of them, Officer Daniels, froze. His eyes locked on me, and his face shifted from professional detachment to stunned recognition. "Judge, is that you?" Daniels asked, his voice almost a whisper. Karen blinked in confusion. "Judge? What judge? This man is a squatter." Daniels turned sharply toward her, his posture stiff. "Ma'am," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument, "this man isn't a squatter. He's judged your last name." Karen scoffed. "I don't care who he is. This property is under HOA jurisdiction now, and he's trespassing." "No, ma'am," Daniels interrupted, his voice firm now. He removed his sunglasses, staring her down. "This is not HOA property. Judge, your last name owns this cabin, the surrounding land, and, if I'm not mistaken, a significant portion of this county. If anyone here is trespassing, it's you." The color drained from Karen's face. She stammered, trying to find her words. That can't be right. The board voted." "The board doesn't have that kind of power," Daniels said flatly. "Not over land that's privately owned. And not over his land." I stood up slowly, brushing the dust off my jeans, and walked toward them. "Karen," I said, my voice calm but sharp as a knife, "you might want to check the county records before you make false claims next time. You've got 30 seconds to get off my land before I have you removed for trespassing." Her mouth opened, then closed, but no sound came out. Finally, with an indignant huff, she spun on her heel and stomped back to her SUV. The officers exchanged amused glances as they tipped their hats in my direction. "Have a good day, Judge," Daniels said, his voice tinged with a mix of respect and quiet amusement. "You too, Daniels," I replied, watching as their patrol cars disappeared down the winding road. Karen's SUV followed behind them, kicking up gravel and dust as it sped away. And just like that, silence returned. The birds resumed their songs. The breeze rustled through the pine trees. The lake sparkled in the distance like nothing had happened. I sat back down in my chair, lifted my coffee to my lips, and chuckled softly. Some people, I muttered under my breath, just don't know when to quit. But I knew Karen, and I knew this wasn't the end. People like her didn't back down easily. The problem was, she had no idea what kind of game she was playing, or who she was playing it against. Because while she thought she was dealing with just another stubborn homeowner, what she didn't realize was simple. I wasn't just a homeowner. I was the man who owned the county. The days after the trespassing incident were eerily quiet, almost too quiet. For a brief moment, I thought maybe Karen had finally learned her lesson. But then again, this was Karen. Quiet wasn't in her vocabulary. By the end of the week, the peace I'd been enjoying shattered with the sound of tires crunching down my gravel drive again. This time, it wasn't just one SUV. 3 black HOA vehicles rolled up in formation, like they were staging some kind of suburban SWAT raid. I sighed and put down my fishing rod, glancing at the trout dancing in the rippling lake below. The serenity was gone, it was about to be another performance. Out they came, Karen leading the charge, clipboard in hand, followed by 2 board members I barely recognized and a man in a cheap suit carrying a briefcase. "Judge, your last name," she sneered, her voice dripping with false confidence. "You've left us with no choice. As of today, this property is officially condemned for violation of community ordinances. You need to vacate immediately." I tilted my head, studying her like one might a mosquito that had overstayed its welcome. Condemned, huh? And who exactly signed that order? The man in the suit stepped forward, clearly trying to project authority. "The HOA board," he said. "We have legal counsel backing this action, and if you refuse to comply, we will pursue law enforcement intervention and fines." I chuckled, a deep, amused sound that made Karen's nostrils flare. "Interesting," I said. "You think you can condemn my property? You must not have looked at the deed records very carefully. Tell me, did your legal counsel happen to notice that the land this cabin sits on, along with the lake, the trails, and the access roads, are owned outright by me? Not leased, not rented, owned by me." Karen crossed her arms defiantly. "That may be, but the HOA voted to extend the community jurisdiction to your property." That means nothing," I interrupted sharply, my voice like a gavel slamming down. "The HOA has no authority here. You don't get to vote to seize private property. And if you'd bothered to do even the bare minimum of legal research, you'd know that." One of the board members shifted uncomfortably, whispering something to the man with the briefcase. His face paled. "You're the judge," he said finally, his tone more cautious now. "The judge last name who presides over the county court." "That's right," I said, folding my arms across my chest. "And not just that, I also happen to be one of the largest landholders in this county. Which means, Karen, that the roads you're standing on, the lake your kids fish in, the trails you jog on every morning, all of it is mine. And you're trespassing." Again, Karen's jaw clenched, but she still wasn't backing down. "You think owning a little land makes you untouchable?" She spat. "We have bylaws. We have the power to." "You have the power to do nothing," I cut in, my voice steady but sharp. "And since you seem to have trouble understanding boundaries, let me make it crystal clear, this is the last time you set foot on my property uninvited. The next time you trespass, I'll have the sheriff's department escort you off and I'll file charges. And believe me, Karen, I will win." The man in the cheap suit looked like he wanted to melt into the ground. The other board members were whispering frantically, clearly realizing the storm they'd walked into. "But Karen," she just doubled down. "You can't bully us," she hissed. "The HOA will not be intimidated. This is a community, and we will not let one arrogant man act like he's above the rules." I smiled slowly, the kind of smile that made even seasoned attorneys nervous in court. "Arrogant," I said softly, stepping closer. "No, Karen, this isn't arrogance. This is reality. And the reality is that I don't just own this cabin. I own the lake, the surrounding acres, and a good portion of this county's budget flows through my office. Do you understand what that means? Every time your board proposes a budget, every time you apply for a permit, every time you try to get county maintenance for your fancy horror events, it crosses my desk. And if I decide it's not in the county's best interest, it doesn't get approved." The color drained from her face. The board members stopped whispering. Even the man in the suit stepped back, his confidence evaporating. "Now," I continued, my voice calm but ice cold, "I suggest you take your clipboard, your paperwork, and your attitude, and leave. Immediately. And you can tell your board that if they try this stunt again, I will have no problem filing an injunction against every single one of you. Do we understand each other?" For the first time, Karen faltered. Her mouth opened like she wanted to argue, but no words came out. Her hands trembled slightly as she clutched her clipboard tighter. Without another word, she turned on her heel and stormed back to her SUV, the others scrambling to follow. Gravel flew as they sped down the drive, their little convoy shrinking into the distance until the mountain silence reclaimed the air. I stood there for a moment, breathing in the cool breeze off the lake, letting the quiet settle again. Then I walked back to the porch, poured myself a fresh cup of coffee, and sat down, rocking gently as the sun began to dip lower in the sky. I knew Karen wouldn't give up completely, people like her never do. But now she understood something important. This wasn't her playground. This was my county. And the next time she tried to cross that line, I wouldn't just shut her down. I'd shut her out, permanently. As I watched the reflection of the mountains ripple across the water, I couldn't help but smile. Owning the land was one thing. Owning the power, that was something Karen would never be able to touch.